Was India's vote politically correct but strategically an error? Did allies arm twist the Prime Minister into ignoring regional strategic considerations? Joining me on the show, Dr. Subramanian Swamy, President Janata Party, SJS Chatwal, former High Commissioner to Sri Lanka. Also joining me on the show, Dr. Manoj Joshi, comments editor, Mail Today. Alex Conte, the UN liaison officer from Geneva. Also joining me, Saurabh Shukla, foreign affairs editor. Dr. Swamy, let me come to you first. Did India make a mistake by voting against Sri Lanka?
It's not a mistake, it's an abject surrender. We are supposed to be de facto head of the SAARC. All the countries of SAARC who are presently represented in the UN HRC, they voted with Sri Lanka. And we were thoroughly isolated in our own region. And for what? We cannot treat foreign policy issues as local issues of our country. We have to take a national view. We are Indians first and then only Bengalis or Tamils or whatever. And I'm surprised to see this abject surrender. It has spoilt our name. It has wrecked our bilateral relations. It's the worst possible decision that could have been taken in the context of the Manmohan Singh talking about looking East Asia policy. Who is going to trust you now? You have actually acted as a junior partner of the Americans, and that is what has destroyed India's reputation.
Okay, abject surrender, says Dr. Subramanian Swamy. High Commissioner Chatwal, China not only lobbied for Sri Lanka, but also called the resolution meddling with Sri Lanka's internal affairs. Is this situation now advantage China? Yes, I'm asking you.
Yeah, I think it's being very unfair saying that it's an abject surrender or calling it dumping our neighbor. Any country who happens to be our neighbor, and if wrong things happen there and if wrong things are done there, it doesn't mean that we sort of overlook it because the country happens to be our neighbor. Let us not forget that during the final phases of the war, there were certainly brutal killings both by the Sri Lankan troops and by the LTTE. But it does not mean that two wrongs make one right. LTTE has been a terrorist organization. You cannot equate it with a sovereign neighboring country.
Okay, but is this Saurabh, is this advantage China now, the current situation?
Clearly, Gaurav, China is going to make the most of it. Don't forget, in diplomacy, there is always an element of quid pro quo. China will remind Sri Lanka that it has stood by Sri Lanka in its hour of need. And this is what Sri Lanka was needing. India should have not heeded to its coalition concerns. There are other ways of pursuing. High Commissioner Chatwal said that, India cannot overlook. Yes, India cannot overlook what's happening in its strategic neighborhood. But there is a way of persuading Sri Lanka. You cannot ask the international community, and India cannot go along with them to put pressure on a friendly neighbor. This is
on a friendly neighbor, and would this mean advantage China? That's one question. Dr. Joshi, today it's Sri Lanka. Tomorrow vested interests may gang up against India on Jammu and Kashmir and raise the human rights bogey there. Have we not exposed ourselves to attack now?
We've already been through all that with regard to the UN Human Rights Commission, with regard to Kashmir, and that issue is over. The Commission no longer is interested in what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir, and as you should know that the violence is down in Jammu and Kashmir.
Unlike, can that bogey raise again? Can vested interests raise that bogey again?
No.
It took a lot of pressure in the 90s to get rid of that problem.
It did not take pressure. It did not take pressure. I think what you have to realize here is that when it comes to Sri Lanka, India is in a different league as compared to China. Given where we are located, given the Tamils in India and the Tamils in Sri Lanka, India is in a completely different league, given the trade between India and Sri Lanka. So I think that Sri Lankans have been given a friendly warning, and I think it was important to give them a friendly warning that they need to do something about rehabilitating the Tamils
in Sri Lanka. I think it's a very important message that needed to be sent to them, and I hope they have got it.
They haven't done that in 3 years.
No, all that.
Push them.
But push them.
Push them bilaterally.
No.
Let it be a bilateral issue. Why become a junior partner, as Dr. Subramanian Swamy was saying? Why become a junior partner of the United States and back them up on their resolution? Do it bilaterally.
No,
be friends with both.
But this is a resolution of the UN body. Why do you call it a US resolution? We have been able to put an amendment which we wanted to put an amendment.
I am sorry. Let me on the 12th of March. On the 12th of March, Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee said our traditional stand has been that we have never supported any country-specific resolution. In 10 days, what changed?
No, because
What changed in 10 days, sir?
No, the change is because we have internal reasons. And
Internal reasons, sir, you've hit the nail on its head.
Let me explain to you. We have 21 kilometers away from Sri Lankan shore, the Tamil Nadu. Now, we are not the only country where internal factor is having effect on our foreign policy. Don't forget that in every country, internal factors have effect on your foreign policy.
But here, internal factors dictate your foreign policy, whether it's with Bangladesh or with Sri Lanka, because you is it because you have a weak center? Let me put that question to Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Dr. Swamy, Mahendra Samar Singhe, the Sri Lankan head of delegation, he said those living in glass houses are best advised to exercise caution before throwing stones. Is his target clearly not India, sir?
Well, of course, they are hurt. There's no question about it. After all, they fought partly our war in fighting the LTT. The LTT was the most anti-Indian organization. It's a terrorist organization which killed Rajiv Gandhi. And instead of appreciating that aspect, we are concentrating on this thing which happened 3 years ago. It's not even current. It's not something like Syria. And let me ask you, why are we so patronizing about Sri Lanka? Their Hindus are, what is the fate of the Hindus in Bangladesh and Pakistan? Do we speak about that? That's not fashionable to do. But you pick on, and Bangladesh is not 21 kilometers away, it's just across the border. So where is this standard that we are following? We have done a somersault, and the somersault appears to be under US pressure. We have now emerged as a country which has gotten into no independent backbone, and therefore I think we have lost all around, and we have certainly strengthened China. China is a more reliable country. That's how everybody is going to feel. It's not a question of being an ally of the United States. Pakistan is a great ally of the United States. They voted against this resolution. And we're looking very silly, I'm sorry to say.
Dr. Joshi, isn't India looking silly today, as Dr. Subramanian Swamy says? On the 12th of March, Pranab Mukherjee said, our traditional stand is that we don't vote for country-specific resolutions. We did not in Syria. 10 days later, this change?
Well, I think it's very obvious that in part it has to do with internal reasons, and I think we'd be a pretty stupid country if we ignored internal reasons and made foreign policy on some abstract principles. And I think there were important considerations there. We'd be a stupid country. I think Mamata Banerjee was right on Teesta, for your information. Look at the Teesta whole point in detail and you'll see that. Here also, your national interests are being worked out in a very careful manner. The Sri Lankan government, if you forget, in 1990 double-crossed us when our boys were there on the ground in Sri Lanka. They supplied weapons to the LTT.
Yep.
They were responsible for the killings of Indian soldiers there. So let's be very clear, the Sri Lankans, the Sinalas are not our friends, not our natural allies. And when it comes to power terms, we ought to look at this in terms of national interest, and which we have. And I think, as I said, that there was a message that needed to be sent to the Sri Lankan government, and that message has been sent.
Okay. Let me try and bring in Dr. Naganathan.
May I intervene here?
Kindly, Dr. Swamy,
for a minute.
Go on.
Yeah, at that time when the Sri Lankan government double-crossed us, it was the LTT which entered into a pact with the then President, Mr. Premadasa. And today we are de facto propagating the LTT point of view. We should be ashamed of ourselves.
We are just looking at it the other way around. I said that the Premadasa entered into a pact with LTT. You're saying LTT entered into a pact with them.
What about LTT?
You can look at it as you like.
No, but the fact of the matter remains.
Of course I will look at it, not the way you want it.
Okay. No, the fact of the matter remains. You talking about reconciliation in Sri Lanka. Let me bring in Dr. Naganathan at this stage. Dr. Naganathan, Sinhala pride has been hurt. That is what initial reports that come in from Sri Lanka seem to indicate. Will this help reconciliation, or will this, dirty the waters even further?
Not at all. Hello?
Go on, Dr. Nagnathan.
Hello? Hello?
Go on, Dr. Nagnathan, we can hear you.
Hello? Yeah, I'm pretty shocked over Dr. Swamy's statement. I'm pretty shocked over Dr. Swamy's statement. Is he talking as a brand ambassador of Sri Lanka? I'm pretty shocked. See, 6 crore Tamil population aspirations have been bypassed.
Are you talking about a brand ambassador of LTT?
6 crore Tamil population aspirations have been bypassed.
You say that. Don't be an LTT ambassador.
No, I'm not. You blame me. You act as stooge of a Sri Lankan government.
Then why are you bringing this question?
India took a very
you are talking like an LTT ambassador.
Let me complete, Mr. Swamy. Let me complete.
Then don't get to your point instead of giving all these speeches.
Council for solution. India backed up Sri Lanka.
Go on, Dr. Nagnathan, make your point. Dr. Nagnathan, make your point.
Resolution was brought. 18th human rights resolution brought in. India backed up Sri Lanka, but India wanted some commitments from Sri Lanka. It wanted the 13th amendment. It wanted the Inter-Lanka Accord of Rajiv Gandhi to be passed. It wanted devolution of powers and legitimate rights of Tamils. 3 years down the line, no much action has been taken by Sri Lanka. Instead, they went back. The Sri Lankan Supreme Court completely nullified the 13th amendment, and Sri Lanka very clearly said that we don't want any type of federal solution imported from India. That's what you behave to a neighboring country with about 6 crore Tamil population who have ethnic relationship with Tamils. So what we have to do?
What ethnic relations? We are the same people.
That India is going away from Sri Lanka and China is taking. Once again, let me finish. So let me assume that China is already, in spite of the resolution or not, China is already with Sri Lanka. During the Indo-China war, Sri Lanka supported China. During the Indo-Pak war, Sri Lanka supported Pakistan. During the Bangladesh war, Sri Lanka provided military fields for the Pakistan flights to bombard our Indian soldiers. So kindly, this is the first time that India has taken a constructive stand over diplomatic arms.
Okay. Are we then, pushing Sri Lanka further into China's arms, or is it immaterial since they have voted against us in the past, since they have taken a stand against us in the past, so it's okay, we should be taking a should we be taking a principled stand or a pragmatic stand?
Well, Gaurav, a pragmatic stand is the need of the hour. Diplomacy is done on pragmatism, and I would say in this case you have to factor in, you are taking on China's string of pearls policy, and clearly it will only help them expand their influence in Sri Lanka. They're going to, as I said earlier, diplomacy, quid pro quo works really well, and this is what the Chinese are going to tell the Sri Lankans. If we were so bothered about Sri Lanka's earlier stances, we should not be giving them arms. We're just concluding a defense agreement with Sri Lanka. Certainly that's not the case. The government realizes that's the reason why we are mending fences with them. That's the reason why we are telling them, listen, that we've toned down this resolution, because we know that we need Sri Lanka as a good friend. It's a strategically important neighbor for us. Yes, Sri Lanka cannot do business with India. That's also the fact. But we also should be aware that this will help China increase its influence in Sri Lanka.